Welcome to Keto Life Support, where we make your keto life sustainable, fun, and low stress. I'm Kim Howerton, and I'll be coming to you weekly with some of my keto besties to bring you the practical, real-world keto advice that you need. Quick disclaimer, I am not a doctor, and even if we do have a doctor in the house from time to time, he or she is not your doctor, and nothing we say on this show should be taken as medical advice. Always check in with a trusted medical professional about your own personal medical concerns.
Hello and welcome to Keto Life Support. This is Kim Howerton with episode number 159. And today we're going to do listener Q&A, which stands for question and answer, if you were unclear about that. I have picked 3 questions that came in, and we're going to try and answer them in a way that makes some sense. All right, so we're going to dive in with the first question, which was about the accuracy of fitness trackers, caloric trackers, and step monitors. So these are things like Apple Watches, Oura Rings, Whoops, Fitbits, those kinds of things. And they do a number of things. Some do others. They all do something. The most basic is going to be a step tracker. That's going to tell you your approximate number of steps. Is every single step tracker 100% accurate? No, they are not. Are they not bad usually? Yeah, I think most step trackers are fairly accurate. The good news about a step tracker is if you wear the step tracker over time, it learns your body, your stride. An example is if you have a ring, something that you wear on your hands or arms, and you're somebody that talks with your hands a lot, you'll probably show more steps than a person that doesn't talk with their hands, because it's incorrectly interpreting your motion as walking. However, one of the reasons we want to keep track of steps is because more motion through the day is more energy used. Well, it's wrong about the actual number of steps. It's tracking just how mobile you are. And so even if it's overcounting your steps, it's probably more accurate than less accurate in terms of overall activity level. And also, if you're wearing your tracker over multiple weeks and months and years, as it learns like what your baseline is, the difference between a low action day and a high action day, that will be trustable. So while I can't say if your step tracker says 10,000 steps, that I can be like, I am 100% sure that you walked 10,000 steps today. I can say that over time, if one day says 2,000 steps and one day says 10,000 steps, you were a lot more active on the step count that is higher day. So I think that step trackers are useful because they're just a bit of data. But let's talk about the caloric estimate. So a lot of these devices then give you an estimated caloric burn for that activity level. And I think that's just about useless. Why is that just about useless? Well, they've actually studied this, and they found that some trackers are as much as 90% off in their caloric estimations. So that's a lot. There are a couple of reasons for that, one of which is exercise adaptation. Exercise adaptation is that your body adapts to how much activity and exercise you do. Therefore, day one of a new routine, let's say you go from completely sedentary to running a mile, you're going to burn a fair amount of energy or calories during that mile. But you keep doing that, you keep getting better at running. In a couple of months, that will burn way fewer calories, but your counter doesn't change. It still thinks that amount of activity is just a set static amount of energy. And that's just not true. So basically, I would say, I think trackers are a great idea. I think they're good for you getting your approximate activity level. I think they should not be trusted at all in terms of caloric level, and never, I'm going to say that again, never have your data affect your food tracker. You know how you can link your step counter to your food tracker, like Chronometer or one of the, MyFitnessPal, whatever you're using, and supposedly it will adjust your caloric intake based on what the tracker says. Never do that. Never, ever do that. Don't ever do that. Do not. Absolutely not. 100% against. Hard no. So if you link it just to track it and have it all in one place, that's one thing. But make sure that your caloric goals are not being adjusted based on your supposed activity from the tracker. Okay, so there you go. That's the answer to that question. Let's answer the second question. Do you have anything about snacks to keep on hand? And then parentheses, I know we are not supposed to snack, but sometimes everyone else is having a snack. And so I eat pecans or pecans, depending on where they're from. And sometimes I make a sweet chaffle, but I was hoping there were other, quote, quick snacks. So here's the deal. In this question, I'm being asked, on the one hand, this person says, I know we're not supposed to snack, but what are some good snacks? And I'm going to say, please see answer A. Now, am I saying like you're instantly going to explode if you ever have a snack? No, I'm not. Am I saying that like if you went to a party once in a while or you were at a barbecue once in a while and somebody had some like crudité out or whatever and you had one, immediately all your weight loss for the month is going to be gone? No, I'm not saying that either. However, what I am saying is anyone who is trying to lose weight or who struggles a little bit to maintain weight loss or maintain a healthy weight for them, you're going to want to become a person who doesn't snack. Like that needs to become your identity. Why is this so important in my opinion? And there are a couple of reasons. Now, again, I'm saying like, hey, if you're snacking and you're able to maintain a healthy weight, fabulous. If you are snacking and you can lose weight, outstanding. This is not common though. And so I'm speaking to the people who struggle a little bit. So if everything's going swimmingly, you're probably not watching this video or listening to this podcast. Okay. So here are some of the reasons that snacking can make proper weight management really challenging. The first one is that they've studied this, and what they found is just calling something a snack makes you eat more calories over the course of a day. Loosely, this is what the study was. They called people in and they gave them a meal and they told them it was a snack. And then they looked at how much food they ate through the rest of the day on their own. And they called people in, did the exact same thing, but they called it a meal. When they called it a meal, they adjusted their daily food intake. So let's say somebody would normally eat 2,000 calories over the course of a day. That was normal for them. These are not numbers from the study. I'm using this as an illustrative example. Say 2,000 calories a day was normal for them. The meal was 500 calories. At the end of the day, they were still somewhere around 2,000 calories because they factored it in. They're like, well, I had one of my meals already, so I'll have my other two. I'll skip lunch because I had lunch. They fed me lunch. Whereas if they told them it was a snack, those calories just got added onto their day. So now instead of averaging around 2,000, they were now averaging 2,500 because they just took the 500 from the snack, which is the same as a meal. They just called it a snack and they added it onto their day. And so now they're at 2,500. So this kind of illustrates that we don't tend to mentally register snacks as being significant caloric intakes when they often are. Let's talk about some of the foods we choose to snack on. Nuts. Nuts were in fact mentioned in this example. A handful of nuts, so small it causes depression in my mind. Like it's just a teeny, it's not even escaping the little inner portion of my palm. It's just so teeny. That's an ounce of nuts, which is actually like the equivalent caloric intake of eating a chicken breast, right? What are some other things we tend to snack on? Pork rinds, desserts, like sweet things, treats, right? All these things, super calorically dense, while simultaneously not being especially filling. So the foods we tend to choose to snack on are actually worse than the foods we choose to put in our meals in terms of satiety and nutrition. So that's another bad part. So putting those two things together, when people snack a lot, they just don't achieve the kind of success that they really want. Now, there are some other reasons that I want to bring up. The first of which is, and many non-keto people will feel triggered by this example, but insulin levels. So every time we eat, we do spike our insulin levels a bit. And depending on our choices, they may go up a little or a lot. Am I saying that your insulin going up during the day is a bad thing? Absolutely not. You might be surprised to hear. Insulin is meant to go up and down through the day. It's meant to go up when you eat, but it's also meant to come down when you're not eating. But if you're eating all day, it's up, 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 and never has a chance to come down. So you do want to have periods of time where insulin is falling. Now, that will always be overnight, right? But it helps the body to have periods of lower insulin during the day as well. It just lowers our body's basal insulin needs. So the second part is something called the migratory motor complex. I think that's what it's called. Basically, I'm not going to go deeply into it, but from a gut perspective, we need periods during the day of gut rest. We need periods where we're not digesting food. And if you think about it, when you eat a meal or even a substantial snack, it actually takes a few hours for you to digest the food. And what happens in that period? So let's say you digest the food and then there's a break. There's a break in eating food. It allows the migratory motor complex to come in. It's like the cleaning crew for our gut. And we want to give our body that chance to get cleaned out, to let that regeneration of our digestive tract to happen. So if we're constantly eating all day, it's sort of like, you're living in a house and the cleaning crew never comes in. It's just things build up. It's not as good for us. So that was a very non-scientific, but hopefully helpful example of why we need some digestive rest in our day. So if you're eating every 6 hours, you're not able to get those periods of time in. And that is what happens when we start snacking. Even if you don't think you're snacking that much, you might be. So I just find it easier, like just definitively, I am not a person who snacks. Take on that identity. But again, this person brought up the fact that when they're around people who are snacking, it's hard not to snack. I totally get it. And this is where we have to get into, is this a sometimes thing or an all the times thing? If it's a sometimes thing, like at Christmas, at a cocktail party, at a holiday party, at a birthday party, like where it's happening once a month, then we can talk about some strategies for those events. Absolutely. If it's like my workmates snack and I'm at work all day and they're snacking, what do I do there? That is a different answer. So if it's a daily or even a multi-day a week thing, you got to find strategies to not snack. So here's one. This is my sippy cup. That's what I call it. I have a sippy cup. It is a large, for those of you that can't see, is a large insulated tumbler full of ice and spritzy water. So sometimes I put a little Zevia in it with some spritzy water is what I call sparkling water. Or it might just be sparkling water, right? But it is a cup that I can grab anytime I either am thirsty, which happens a lot, or I just need a momentary distraction and where I have an emotional need to snack, maybe what I would want to be doing in that moment. I can pick up my cup, I can put my little straw in my mouth and take a sip. You can even hear it. Little ice right there, right? And so that hand to mouth, boredom, anxiety, whatever, it's either boredom or anxiety for me, that makes me want to do that. So I have that option and it causes absolutely no problem. It is no calories, low impact. Now, when I first started keto, I did this with an iced coffee. So the iced coffee was sweet. I used sweetener in it. It had coffee. It had a little bit of cream, but not a lot. So when you're more overweight and more metabolically unhealthy, that little bit of calories is actually less of a negative impact on your weight loss as when you're thinner and trying to lose the last few pounds. I'm just going to say. So at the time it was fine. It had a little heavy cream in it. Now I would do it black or with just a mini splash of half and half or almond milk or something like that. But that was like a sweet treat. When I first started keto and I had cravings, I would use my sippy cup of iced coffee. Now I'm like, let's just do sparkling water. So that can change over time. So having a substitution that isn't going to cause harm can be helpful for transitional periods. But again, if you're In an office situation or where this is like a daily thing or a regular thing, you're going to have to work on your self-talk, your training. And if you get to a point where you're unable to deal with it, you might have to change your environment. I know that's extreme potentially, but what is at the end of the day most important to you? And if your location, your friend group, your coworker group is causing you to be in a body that is going to have significant health issues, that's something you might have to address. That being said, you might be doing things that are putting you in the path of danger that we can look at taking you out of. The first is you might be under eating at your meals. So I would suggest if you're going to be in an environment where snacking is hard to avoid, front load your food for the day. Eat a big breakfast. After a big breakfast, I am much less likely to want a mid-morning pick-me-up, right? Even though the donuts might look good, if I'm a little bit peckish, they're almost impossible to resist. But if I just had an omelet, they're a lot easier to resist. Same with lunch. If you tend to have afternoon sweet cravings in the office when Janice opens up the cake box, make sure you have a really substantial, filling, and satisfying lunch. And maybe have a lighter dinner if your home environment is less tempting to you. That being said, if you're I snack after dinner person, having a more satisfying, larger dinner might be helpful. So make sure you're not under eating at meals near where you're most tempted to snack. Some of us unconsciously do this intentionally. That's a weird statement. Let me explain what I mean. When I was someone who gave in to my binge eating desires a lot more than I do at this point, I would not eat breakfast in an effort to be hungrier when I was around the kinds of foods I wanted to binge on. Whereas I knew if I ate a healthy breakfast, I would be less likely to eat the 4 donuts. So arm yourself by eating good for you and good and healthy meals so that you're less likely to be as tempted by the other things being presented to you. Even if that means for a period of time, you feel like you're almost overeating at those meals. I find there is kind of a place where you go a couple of weeks of not snacking and it stops calling your name as loudly. And then you can back off the meals a little bit if that is more appropriate for your goals. But I would rather have people eat good, solid, nutrient dense, filling meals and overdo those a little bit than be snacking all day long. You're going to end up net less calories over the whole day. I don't think I could eat 4,000 calories in a day just in good whole foods, satisfying meals. I think I would feel too stuffed. I could certainly do it with fast food and snacks all day. Absolutely. I have done it and I regret it. So that's my point there. Now, let's say that you are in a once in a while situation, right? It's not that often that it happens, but it happens, once in a while. I don't know that I need to define that, but once in a while. And there you have to decide, am I just going to have some snacks today and just let it not impact me mentally? Because the worst thing you can do is, I had snacks on Tuesday. I might as well have snacks on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. That's not once in a while anymore. And just have a couple snacks and just call it good and try to adjust your next meal or your previous meal to be a little lighter. Or plan to have a snack meal. So you're going to somebody's house. They're going to be serving snacks. There's a party and it's not like a dinner party. It's more of like a cocktail party. And so there are going to be snacks served, snack-like food served. You bring something that is appropriate for you to eat, right? So usually at these events, there's a cheese platter and there's maybe some crudité and some dip. And you're like, I'm going to have the cheese and the dip and the salami because those are things that I will eat and they fit in my framework. But they are not a snack. They are a meal. So have enough of them that it actually is a meal. And that's your meal. That is another thing you can do. The other thing I would say is make sure that you're not fooling yourself about what once in a while means, right? So like I said, once in a while, it's not going to have a major impact if you have a few snacks. but make sure that is not often. Your body will tell you if you're lying to yourself or not, how you are doing with your goals. That being said, what are the types of snack foods that I keep in my house, not to snack on, but to make a snack meal with, or for when I travel? Carnivore crisps, carnivore snacks. They're companies that make similar products, but they're a little bit different. Things that I can make a dip out of. So Greek yogurt, spices. I always have red peppers and cucumbers in my fridge so that I can make like a dip bowl or whatever. So if I want to do a snack meal, maybe I'm just really busy, my snack meal will be, and when I say snack meal, I mean a meal-sized meal made of foods that I think of as snacks, because there are certain foods you think of as snacks. They're different. So that might be a bunch of cut up veggies with a dip I've made, maybe some cheese. I might have a slice or two of cheese, some salami or some carnivore crisps, carnivore snacks, some type of processed meat like that. I was going to say, there's another word, cured meat, and a whole big plate of that kind of stuff. And that hits the spot some summer evenings when I don't want to cook. And so you could make a plate like that for your hangout with friends when they're, quote, snacking, but you're having a meal. So that's my advice. My first advice is be careful about moments when you say things like, I know we're not supposed to, but essentially what you're asking me is, I know we shouldn't smoke, but which brand of cigarettes are the least harmful? And I would just stop and think about that question and really evaluate what you're asking. And then look a little deeper for some insight, because that's probably going to point you to some good information about maybe why things aren't going as well as you might want them to on your weight loss journey. So no judgment, please. I really don't mean any judgment on that. If you're like, I like snacking more than I like weight loss, feel free to snack. Just know what you're asking for when you ask yourself some of these questions. All right, last question, number 3. So these were actually 2 people asked similar questions, so I'm going to say them both because they're the same underneath. How to motivate yourself when you are over it and want to quit. And the second question is, I know what I'm supposed to do, but why am I not doing it? So let's talk a little bit about motivation and stick-to-itness. Motivation is momentum, right? You're motivated to get moving. I sound like a cow, moving. But when you're like, I'm at a standstill, I'm right here, I'm standing still, and I need something to push me to get started. That's motivation. But motivation doesn't keep you going, right? So instead, we need to look at systems and evaluate, are we doing the right things to get the results we want? And what both of these people are telling me is I can no longer identify with the part of me that wants this enough. Because eating less food than you really want to eat, even if that's not that's either quantity of food or types of foods, however you want to say it, having any level of restriction is terrible. No one likes that. Not long term, right? It's not fun. It's not the most fun you could have. If you could eat whatever you wanted and still get all the results you wanted, everyone would choose that. Prove me wrong, right? If you could be perfectly healthy, weigh what you want, right? But you choose how much and exactly what you want and it has no impact on that, I think everyone would choose that option. And so there is some level of compromise that we all have to make. And we're all weighing the results we want versus the effort we're willing to expend, right? We all do it. I do it. Yes, I could weigh less than I do right now. Am I willing to expend the effort it would take to get there? The answer is clearly no, right? Because I'm not currently losing weight. And that might be a conscious decision, right? I might be like, right now I'm in a period where it's not worth it to me to put that effort in. I've got other priorities. I am choosing right now to not lose weight. But sometimes it's unconscious. You're choosing to not take action to the level that will get you to your goal, but you're not doing it intentionally, right? Your subconscious is doing it for you, but you're not saying out loud, I am intentionally not losing weight right now. I'm just using that as an example, fill in the blank on whatever goal you have. Kind of feel like that's what these people are saying, but maybe that's, I'm projecting. So I would say to these people, get in agreement with what is. That sounds very new age, I know. So here's what is happening. You are unwilling, and that sounds judgmental, and it's not. You are currently unwilling to do what it would take to achieve your goals. Okay. Good. Get clear on that. And then get okay with it. I know that sounds crazy. Get okay with that for yourself. Now, here's the deal. It doesn't have to mean that that is permanent, right? Add the words right now. Right now, I am not willing to do the things that would get me the goals that I want. I'm not willing to do the actions. I'm not willing to take the actions that would achieve my goals right now. All right. What am I willing to do? Where am I willing to draw the line? Okay. I am willing to draw the line at not harming myself. I would like to make sure that I'm acting in a way where I'm not actively harming myself every day with the foods that I'm choosing or the activities I am or aren't doing. So for me, that looks like maintenance. I don't want to be gaining weight, or certainly not gaining weight at a pace that I can't at some point in the future fix. I don't want to be eating in a way, this is part of it too. So that's just the physical outcome, right? I don't want to eat in a way that makes me feel crazier. I want to be eating in a way that makes me feel saner. For me, that means not triggering my inner binge eater, which means not binging. So for me, what's the least stressful thing I could do here? I've acknowledged that I'm not in a place where extreme restriction is going to work for me because it's clear I'm not doing it. So just get okay with that. Right now, I'm not willing to engage in a level of restriction that potentially I would need to meet my long-term goals. Okay. But I'm also not willing to feel like a crazy person and trigger my extreme binge eating by choosing certain types of foods that do trigger my binge eating. Okay. You notice I'm starting to build a framework of what kind of eating would work for me right now. And so step by step by step, by taking away the judgment of what you should be doing, by taking away this idea that maybe if you're not trying to lose weight, you have failed as a woman. I don't know. And just get right with what is right now and say, okay, where can I find the best balance between not harming myself, being fairly sane, for you, we all have a level, and like enjoying my life. What does that look like? Because if you haven't thought about it, you might not know off the top of your head, but you. And I trust that you can work out a way to eat and a way to live and a way to be for some number of months that will feel like an exhale, that will feel like I can breathe again. I don't feel up against it anymore. I don't feel the same kind of pressure. Now, are you going to have good days and bad days? Are there going to be times when your brain tells you mean things? All of that, absolutely yes. But I guess long answer short, sounds like both of these women need to get into alignment with a period of weight maintenance. So that's my answer to that question. All right, those were my answers for today. I hope that was helpful for you. I will be joining you in the future again to answer some more questions. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Keto Life Support. Want more information? Want show notes? Want to suggest a topic? Just head over to ketolifesupport.com. That's where all that kind of thing can go on. By the way, I have a request. If you could go to your podcast host and hit subscribe, we would really, really appreciate it. And what would be even more awesome is if you could write a review. And what would be even more awesome than that is if you could write like a really flattering review. Just asking, you do you. All right. So thanks so much for joining us. I'm thrilled that you're part of the Keto fam. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.